everyone, to a very exciting DeFi Raiders AMA. My name is Relentless. Today I have the pleasure of hosting Morpheus, the founder and developer, and Investor X, the business development lead for Morphex, the decentralized perpetual exchange coming to Phantom. Thanks so much for joining the show. Really excited to talk to you guys today. Thankful for your time and the opportunity. Do you guys want to go ahead and just kind of give an intro and your background, and then we'll kind of launch into the project after that?
Sure. So I'll start. Basically, my main kind of experience with DeFi has been running Morpheus Swap since 2021. So we launched in, I think it was exactly September 9th or September 12th. So this was like just when Phantom was picking up steam, when it was getting its very first incentives, when everything was absolutely in up-only mode, that's for sure. And yeah, so I've just been sort of building throughout this time. I was involved with crypto before, but not really in any sort of leading a project sense. I had contributed to various protocols and then decided to launch Morpheus Swap basically solo, because I didn't really like the people that I had worked with prior. And after being able to, like, this period was probably around like 2-3 weeks until there was a lot of success coming along for Morpheus Swap, and we were able to attract much better talent who have stuck around with us even till now. So yeah, and essentially I mostly focus on the development side of things, but especially with the experience of launching a project solo, I also have experience basically in a lot of different aspects of running a project, and so I'm involved in probably every single area of most decisions and whatnot.
All right, me next. I'm Investor X. You can call me X. I got in touch first with Morpheus, I guess, a couple of months ago, more from a BD perspective. And that was because I was working with, or I still am, with Colm Financial. That's one of the smaller projects on the Phantom network. So I've got a very similar perspective to working on projects as Morpheus does. And I guess I can summarize that with the fact that, or rather, who you work with really changes, greatly changes how well the project will turn out. You can have two very similar projects on two very similar chains, and completely different communities, but based on how the people interact with each other, and I guess the dynamics between everyone and how everyone pulls through and works together, right? That really changes things. So I guess since I got started with Morpheus Swap or Morphex about, I guess, 1.5-2 months ago, I've really seen that in the I guess now Morphex team, which kind of echoes what Morpheus said. Yeah. Over in Colm, I manage, I try to lead BD and treasury management, quite similar to what I do here in Morphex, BD and marketing. So similar to Morpheus, I'm quite, I guess, multi-talented. We all have to be in DeFi. Like if there's a plug that, if there's a hole that needs to be plugged, someone's gotta do it. Just that I don't do dev work. Yeah. So that's me.
Very cool. Very cool. A lot of experience there just between the two of you. And I know that you kind of got a small team, so it's obviously helpful to have that much experience. And having that kind of experience just building something by yourself as well, Morphex. I mean, that really shows you what all it takes and kind of it's able to help you hone in exactly what you need, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Just real quick, I think like one of the aspects I've always really enjoyed is being like a founder, and I think this probably would help a lot of other protocols, is when the sort of how do you say, like the top of the team or like the lead of the team also tries to upkeep a lot of community aspects and sort of interacting with their community. This is something that I extremely enjoy. about being able to run a DeFi protocol. Just having this direct sort of interaction with basically each and every single user.
Yeah, super cool, super cool. All right, so let's kind of, before we get super into Morphex, let's kind of do a little background, if you don't mind. If you want to kind of tell the history of Morpheus Swap, and then what was the kind of leading factors to transitioning into Morphex.
Yeah, I can give a brief rundown. So essentially, Morpheus Swap had launched as in the very, very beginning, like the first month or two, it had been just a farm with where we were able to rapidly expand in adding a DEX, as well as at the time we were tinkering a lot in terms of a flywheel model with the idea of revenue share pools, we call them neo pools. And we were basically just tinkering around a lot with the different models that were available at the time, because towards that time, that was when a lot of protocols had started adopting the VE style or the curve style. And yeah, so really the main focus of Morpheus Swap for a long time was being able to provide a sort of positive kind of flywheel effect, and really working on like integrations deeply with other protocols. So some examples, there was a time when we were originally going to work on a deal with Spirit Swap in terms of being able to fill in a hole for like under incentivized pools, but that deal unfortunately fell through. But then right after, Morpheus Swap became eligible for the VE NFT from the original Solidly launch during Andre Cronje's time, and that was definitely crazy. Unfortunately, Solidly didn't turn out as many people expected, us included, and so we had to pivot our strategy again. We had released a liquid staking derivative, which was essentially a wrapper for XLQDR from the Liquid Driver protocol. XLQDR is their sort of VE/curve style governance kind of mechanism, where users would lock it up for a maximum of 2 years, be eligible for revenue share, voting, etc. And so we released a wrapper for that. And at the time, we were mostly kind of focused on being able to become a sort of optimizer layer on top of Liquid Driver. But sort of roadmaps changed, and it kind of became evident that, especially to me, that I wanted to bring sort of Morpheus Swap into a place where, first of all, it didn't just appeal to such a possibly niche kind of degen community, sort of being able to attract a much larger user base in general. So this would be sort of relating to the rebranding, essentially our marketing, just our community engagement. And at that time, well, I think like this was a period of maybe 2 months, sort of around August to October. There were some ideas being thrown around for Morphex. The name for Morphex had already been thought up of like months ago. But originally it was, we were thinking of possibly doing a stablecoin protocol, but we quickly understood that we wouldn't really be able to execute that well upon the idea, for a variety of reasons. One of them was, I think for really any like large scale successful stablecoin protocol, it's very vital to be able to have a large amount of funds, in terms of like, if you take DAI, for instance, they had a DAI savings rate, or if you take other stable coins, essentially being able to provide that yield, but so that it isn't in an inflationary token, which is going to go to zero in like, a couple of months as everyone just dumps it. And so that was sort of like a high barrier, and that's why there's quite some time we were thinking about that. And then the idea came for doing, essentially this could be sort of seen as like an upgrade to the existing DEX that Morpheus Swap was. And so not just using Uniswap v2 based AMM style sort of for the protocol design, but this time taking inspiration from GMX and being able to provide a really smooth user experience and interface for futures trading on Phantom. And yeah, I think that's kind of summing it up really quickly. Morphex is essentially, just if anyone doesn't know, like sort of in a general sense, it's like a relaunch / rebrand of the existing Morpheus swap protocol on Phantom. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what we'll be able to provide to our users.
Yeah, I guess one thing that I can add at this point, something that I've seen and observed and I'm really appreciative of over the past about 1.5 months that I've been associated with Morphex. During my time in Com, I did a lot of research into all of the DEXs around, and in fact, a lot of different types of projects. And it's quite rare that you have, the dev team or the founders like stick with the project and be continuously active throughout the whole of like 2022. A lot of projects, like, the developers just left them, or they went off to, start other projects, or, just move on, right? And even with, even with known people, right, doxed members, fully doxed, like recently the Omami CEO, and the shenanigans that went down in terms of him dumping on the entire community as the team leaves. I guess that's one thing that really struck me, that the not only Morpheus, but a large portion of the team has stuck with Morpheus swap through the entirety of 2022. Regardless of what's happened on the Phantom chain or price action of the general market, but they've all stuck together, and the community has been really strong. So I think that's something that is quite intangible, and it's really hard to it's impossible to value, but it does bring a lot of it does bring a lot of value, right? When you launch a new project. It shows you, I guess, the intangible trust, that you have towards the team behind the scenes, and especially the dev, that they will follow through with their roadmap and their plans. Yeah, that's it from me.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, what we've seen, from 2022 or the teams that kept building are the ones that are becoming extremely successful, right? When you think about like Camelot over on ARB and what they did with Excalibur, and, they couldn't obviously predict the UST collapse, the Terra collapse, but they kept working, and nobody knew what they were doing in the background, but they kept building it.
Yeah.
And then it's also important to highlight, just how successful Morpheus swap was prior to 22. You guys managed over $100 million in TVL, right? And it was a super successful project, and there's just, no one could have predicted that market, right? But then to see the team stick around and continue to build after you'd already built something super successful, and to keep working through that market, I think, that gives a ton of confidence for everyone. Yeah, I'm just going to stick around because I know that these dudes are going to make it something better and make it all right. So. So I think
thank you.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's why you guys have still such a great following, and still such great hype, is because of what you've done before and what you continue to do for the community. People preach community all the time, but like you said, X, how many of those, developers bailed on their community when times got tough, so.
Yeah.
And good luck recovering when you try to build something in the future after bailing on everybody. So.
Yeah.
All right, so very cool. So let's kind of dive into the project specifics here, and really talk about Morphex. So first, you guys are built on top of GMX, and I don't want to dive too much into the specifics of GMX. I think there's 10 billion Twitter threads. If anyone really doesn't know what GMX is, they can go and read. But what I'm interested in is what you guys took from GMX and what you guys think that you have built on top of it that makes it a superior product.
All right. So really what we see with GMX, and especially being on Phantom, is that first off, there's there's a large sort of market, I think, for being able to offer spot and perpetual futures at the same time for tokens which may not be as, let's say, typically blue chip. And also working to incorporate a sort of mix between a VE sort of solidly kind of model for where users up to some percentage are able to vote for exactly which kind of tokens would be incentivized. In the very beginning for Morphex, what will be setting us apart is we've spent quite a long time working on a design for the UI. So the UI is fully custom built by us. We're putting a large focus into user sort of experience, especially in terms of trading, as well at the same time being able to provide a mobile experience that is actually, nice to have. Because unfortunately, a lot of DeFi protocols do not have the very best mobile experience. And I think in general that there's quite a ways to go to make crypto and DeFi, better on mobile, because I think everyone has run into the multitude of issues with MetaMask mobile compared to desktop or whatever. But so really, especially in the beginning, we're putting a large focus into providing a unique and, in our opinion, superior user experience as well as interface. In terms of plans that we have for being able to build on top and sort of build around this base GMX model, some of those different things include delta neutral vaults. And so some ideas would be sort of being able to provide a delta neutral vault where, let's say, someone would want a absolutely sort of delta neutral position, or if someone on the opposite may want a more long/short position. And this would all be based off of the MLP, or the Morphex liquidity pool token, which is essentially just, an index of various assets. In the beginning, they'll be mainly blue chips, but we'll be working to be able to expand that as quickly as possible, to be able to include other tokens which don't really have that experience or exposure, to being able to be traded on futures markets. One other thing that I'm very keen about is being able to bring a really nice experience for an options market to Phantom, which this would be a development that would be also after launch. But essentially, it would all be able to be accessible from one user interface. And one sort of key feature of these options markets is working to be able to allow them to hedge the position automatically by using the underlying Morphex protocol, which would be based off of GMX. So being able to hedge those positions. And those are just a couple of the things that we have planned. I would say the main parts currently at the moment is perfecting the user experience and UI. We also have a lot of plans for how we're going to be able to incentivize and bring traders to start using our platform, because really one of the most important things in the very beginning is being able to build up rapidly trading liquidity. I think that's really, for any exchange, that is like the one thing that you want the most. So a lot of focus is really going to be going into there. And then once we have this sort of set up at a position where we can see, we've achieved a certain level of growth, this is where we can start sort of adding in additional products that are straight, accessible from one UI, integrated with everything, all under one umbrella of Morphex.
Yeah, I think I'll add just a touch. So you've got the main, the top dog of the show, right? GMX, and you've got a whole bunch of other GMX folks. The main innovations and developments beyond the GMX baseline that, by and large, all the folks have done would be very simple vaults or integration of NFTs and the NFT claiming capability, just like the GMX's Blueberry Club, onto the, directly onto the folks' dApp. So these, so this is really the limit of the innovation in the space so far. So what we're doing with Morphex, that's more like taking pretty much taking the GMX baseline, adding in what they've done with Rage Trade, what they've done with DopeX, putting it all on the same platform. And all of the fees associated would be returned within that same system, as opposed to being extracted to different protocols. So I think I'll leave it at that for this part.
Yeah, very cool. 1 second, writing this down so I don't forget. You guys are addressing a ton of things that have been talked about really over the last year. Especially, we talk about like mobile, right, and how essential that's going to be for mass adoption, right? How much people that are currently in the space want to see it and be able to do these things securely from their phone, but then also how important that's going to be for onboarding and wide scale adoption is the ability to do all this from their phone. So I think that attacking that problem and coming out with a product that's actually usable, and doesn't have the same kind of issues that you do see with MetaMask Mobile is going to be huge. And then also adding the Delta neutral vaults, I think is huge, because the importance of Delta neutral, has been highlighted over the last year with these tough markets. And I think there's like some misunderstanding there about how important that is. When a market's going down or a market's going sideways and everything's low and there's not a lot of money, being able to protect yourself with the Delta neutral vaults, I think is great. I think you guys are working on a lot. Those are going to be really cool features. And then something else that I think that you guys should probably highlight is the things you're doing for the onboarding process, right? As far as how that's going, as far as the advantages there for mass adoption. You guys are doing some things, in the same way with that the Phantom Foundation had announced about simplifying that process, and then the gasless interactions. Do you guys want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a really key point about, I think, why, Phantom is such a great place to be building on right now. We've seen the foundation, I guess you could possibly say, sort of take a pivot from the strategy that they were using earlier. And now they've got a sort of tech-first mindset in terms of just being able to deliver on progress as well as updates. Obviously, of course, we also have Andre back and, making people happy by replying to everyone. But it's great to see what's planned specifically for 2023 on Phantom. I think it's really huge that we will be seeing account abstraction this year, along with gas subsidies, economic abstraction. These are all things which are really meant to ease the process of onboarding newer users. And this plays exactly into how we see Morphex will be taking its position, sort of also reaching on like the previous topics, basically kind of bringing everything under one hood, if you'd call it, everything under one protocol to be very easily accessible straight away, whichever service that like a user would require, and something that is obviously not confusing. And playing into what the foundation has planned, specifically with account economic abstraction, being able to provide gas subsidies so we can incentivize users from other chains to try out the platform without even requiring FTM in their wallet. These are all really big things. And the progress to make in terms of onboarding users to crypto, obviously it's not something that happens, I think, all at once. It really takes a lot of incremental steps and changes to get there. And we are still at like the very beginning of what you could consider mass adoption. There's still so much more room for growth, and we see a lot of potential for growth and support on the Phantom blockchain. It also has proven that it has a really great runway, essentially 30 plus years worth. And at the same time, being able to provide a really adequate and just overall good system for incentivizing people to be building on Phantom and making that sort of path to development much easier for anyone who wants to build a project on Phantom or is already building one. So these are all really welcome things. And I think that's why Phantom in general has probably always been known for having a really vibrant community. And I think the foundation is proving this yet again by showing how much, support they're wanting to give.
Yeah, and I take the opportunity to, I guess, hammer home the implications of the account abstraction as well as the gas subsidies from how I see it, right? It enables us to build a competitor to CeFi entities. You think about all the, anyone who has bought crypto, held it on a centralized exchange, never had a MetaMask, or maybe they had a MetaMask once and got hacked and decided never to do it again. The dangers with and complexities with managing your seed phrase, managing your passwords, having a hardware wallet. The account abstraction would allow Web 2 login capabilities. So like Face ID or username password, right, to directly access their wallet without the need for a seed phrase. I think that's really exciting because you're no longer just reaching out into the DeFi space, but able to extend into the I guess the current dominant Web 2 space, right? That makes up the majority of the market. Yeah.
Yeah, very valid points. I try to explain the idea of a seed phrase and all that stuff to my dad, and he's like, yeah, I don't care about all that. But if you're able to do all this through a simplified, Web 2 type experience that people are used to, that's critical. So, and then, back to your point, Morphex, I think it is, Phantom is lucky to have Andre back. I know a lot of people, you could go into that all day, but a healthy, refreshed, motivated Andre with a great runway on Phantom is huge, and the advances that they're making and trying to make it a more builder friendly environment, and the availability there now to build with people migrating to other chains during this time, and then Phantom doing all that work in the background, I think is just a perfect opportunity to kind of take it by storm. So very cool. All right, so I think we got a decent understanding of kind of the project specifics and the overview. Let's kind of talk about what you guys are doing for your tokenomics. First, do you want to kind of talk about the distribution, and then we can go into kind of staked MPX and then MLP and all that stuff?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of distribution and sort of general, let's say token supply / tokenomics, this was a governance proposal that Morpheus Swap PILS token holders voted on. And this proposal was successfully passed in the end of January. So I think probably around maybe a bit more than 2 weeks ago. And in the proposal, we had overwhelming support for the distribution that we now have. And so we earmarked 20% of the new MPX supply for migrators from the previous project. And so this would be for PILS token holders, granting them a 1-month migration period, where half of the tokens that they receive from swapping are vested linearly for a year. Then moving on to protocol incentives. These would be sort of protocol liquidity incentives, mainly for MLP, and these would be distributed in the form of escrowed MPX. And so for this, we're earmarking 25% of the MPX token supply, 10% for the team members, according to essentially the same vesting schedule that we're keeping for the entire token supply. So really just keeping that ideal 1-year linear vesting. And then we decided to allocate 45% to the Morphex treasury. And this is what we would be using for marketing incentives, funding rounds, partnerships, providing protocol-owned liquidity, as well as being able to compensate additional community contributors. And so one thing that we sort of realized with Morpheus Swap was that we always ran into the issue of our treasury was never well stocked enough in order to support the protocol. And so we missed out on a lot of potential opportunities, either because we didn't have enough, let's say, stable liquidity in treasury, or we also missed out on a good amount of opportunities just because Treasury didn't even have a good amount of our own token pills. So with keeping those two factors in mind, it was pretty obvious that we definitely want to make sure that the protocol actually has a healthy supply of the entire token supply. And so that's why we thought 45% would be the best. So far, Treasury has been using these tokens, and well, we ran like two small giveaways, so just count that as marketing incentives. But we also have already sort of successfully done public kind of raising rounds or bonds. And so currently we're running our second bonding round, where the terms are being able to bond USDC for MPX at a rate of 0.35 or like 35 cents of USDC. With a 2-month initial cliff and a 14-month linear vesting. Earlier, we had already ran a previous bonding round, which was very successful. It essentially had fully sold out from the amount that we had earmarked for it. And so from that bond, we were able to raise more so as $230,000 worth of FTM and USDC for the Morphex Treasury. And so currently, that's what we're using the Morphex Treasury for. And the overall total supply of the MPX token is 50 million. It could be potentially slightly lower. This is just dependent on how many people migrate from pills. So far, we've seen that I think around 7.5 million out of 9.6 million pills have been successfully migrated. So most likely there might be some amount that's kind of left over that people don't migrate because for some reason there are people who are still providing liquidity for pills, FTM, and Spirit Swap. But yeah, those would sort of be the general kind of token distribution / incentives. And we envision this to be able to comfortably support the protocol well over a year in terms of like having specific token incentives for liquidity, because that's extremely important in the bootstrapping sort of growth phase. Yeah, we don't have any sort of specific emission or planned emission rate that we want to stick to, like we did with Morpheus Swap, for instance, because really we realized that it's much more beneficial to analyze each month and be able to properly sort of send what we believe, in terms of being able to target a specific APR or whatever specific amount of incentives that we want to be able to give users to attract them. It's much more beneficial for Treasury to be flexible in that sense, and just presenting everything to the community as, we analyze things. Because that's one very key factor, I think, is definitely being able to constantly monitor, analyze, and optimize. So there's no set emission rate in that sense. But everything is going to be well announced beforehand, as well as presented to the community. Full transparency. So yeah, that would sum up essentially the general sort of distribution and supply of MPX.
Oops, sorry, I couldn't get that to unmute. Yeah, very cool. Very well thought out token distribution model. I like your approach to the treasury for sure. Create sustainability as well. And then obviously your migration process and the bonding and all that has been going very well from what I've seen. So that's got to be really exciting. Very cool. So do you want to kind of talk about all the benefits for MPX holders and stakers?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of benefits for MPX holders, currently the only opportunity for MPX that is just on Equalizer. We recently launched our liquidity for the token on Equalizer less than a week ago. Already been seeing some insane volume stats since creating the liquidity. But in terms of, aside from being able to provide liquidity by pairing it with FTM, the main benefits for MPX holders will be mainly staking it in the new protocol to be eligible for a percentage of revenue, as well as escrowed MPX incentives. And so this would also allow users to take part in governance. But essentially, there will be a staking model that is more or less quite similar to GMX. We decided here that we don't really want to mess around with what we believe is actually a pretty good solution, just in the sense that I never enjoyed, like, when we had this craze of VE token and like curve style kind of models. I never really liked the idea of, going to some DeFi protocol and locking up your tokens for like 2 to 4 years. I personally would never do that. I think it probably only works in like, a couple of cases really well, like obviously curves and a few others. But at the same time, you need to be able to think of a system which is able to combat mercenary liquidity. And this is a problem that we saw, especially with Morpheus Swap. We were just giving away a very high amount of total protocol revenue, but there were no sort of, how would I say? It was a very easy system in the sense that there were like pretty much zero requirements. Like, you would just have the token and stake it, and you'd be eligible for your share of 80%. And so with this, we saw a lot of mercenary activity with our token, and we saw that flywheel could also go negative and actually really harm the price of the token and all that. So we believe that, especially with a boosting model, as well as a escrowed token incentive model, where this provides the user with the opportunity to either continue staking the escrowed MPX to be receiving even more share of staking incentives, as well as revenue share, or having the option to vest their escrowed MPX over 1 year. So that would sum up the staking side of things, and in terms of what incentives they would be receiving. In terms of the boost mechanism, this is also based off of what GMX is offering. So it keeps in mind a multiplier point that you receive for staking, and this can increase the amount of rewards that you'd also be receiving.
That's a lot of rewards.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, tons of incentives to stake and keep the protocol healthy, and really just kind of give back to the investors in the community. So very, very cool. And then, all right, so awesome. So appreciate the breakdown there. And then, do you want to kind of talk about next the Morphex liquidity pool, and then your shared liquidity model?
Yeah, so in terms of the Morphex liquidity pool, it could be thought of as an index of crypto assets that act as the counterparty for traders. So regular swaps, in terms of spot trading, these all go through the liquidity pool, and so the reserves are changed accordingly. But then in the case of leverage trading, whatever amount is meant to be in terms of let's say profit for the trader's position, that amount is reserved. And so whenever a trader opens a position, essentially a snapshot of the USD value of their collateral is taken. The vault contract, which is the main contract controlling essentially sort of the basis of the entire futures trading system, then keeps this in mind and is able to accurately calculate the loss or profit of that trader. So with this model, with the liquidity pool being the counterparty to all trades, this means that when traders make a loss, liquidity providers will be gaining that loss, essentially. Whereas if traders are on average being much more profitable, then the MLP liquidity pool will be taking on that loss, since, again, it's acting as the counterparty to all trades. Now, statistically, usually traders on average, unfortunately, lose more than they profit, as well as the fact that in order to well incentivize liquidity providers for taking on this risk in the protocol, we are going to be distributing 60% of the entire protocol revenue to liquidity providers. And this also doesn't include the regular multiplier points as well as escrow token incentives that we were talking about earlier. In the beginning, the Morphex liquidity pool would be consisting mainly of blue chip assets, because really most of the trading obviously is happening in those areas, and these tokens have the most abundant liquidity. But in terms of limits to which assets could be listed, there's actually quite the amount of choice. A lot of it really revolves around making sure that correct parameters are set in terms of maximum weight, what could the maximum utilization be for the said asset, especially with lower liquidity ones. But really, the only sort of concrete requirement is being able to have a chain link oracle for that asset that is being traded. And so in the future, I'd envision being able to have multiple liquidity pools. And so one would be able to consist of the typical sort of blue chip assets, because it's very important to note that the Morphex liquidity pool, or in the case of what we're building off of or basing off of in GMX's case, GLP, it's widely regarded as a pretty good sort of general kind of blue chip crypto index, which at the same time is earning you pretty decent yield. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Jones DAO, but they are providing killer yield, especially. And there's a couple of other protocols that are also being able to provide really great yield opportunities on top of GMX's existing GLP. So it's important that, again, just to be able to note the fact that it's not just, let's say, your regular sense of providing liquidity where you're really just, kind of bound with only two tokens. I guess you could say that it's very similar to balancer pools or Beethoven pools for anyone on a Phantom, where you have various amount of tokens in one single liquidity pool of varying weights. And this can essentially, create these on-chain indexes to be able to diversify your exposure to various crypto assets.
Yeah, awesome. That is very, very well thought out. And I love the opportunity to have exposure to a bunch of different assets and not kind of just be, boxed into a couple different things. Really gives you a lot of confidence, in investing. So I really do like your guys' tokenomics and your token model, and then all the incentives, and just the different ways that users can earn there. So very well thought out, and I'm looking forward to the launch there and being able to try to get involved. So, all right. So the next thing, we can let's talk a little bit about your fee structure for the traders.
Yeah, sure. So there are different fees in terms of leverage as well as spot trading. So for spot trading, again, since this is a sort of multi-asset sort of liquidity model, which has a lot of comparisons that could be sort of made against balancer / Beethoven types of pools, the fees in this case are dynamic, and they depend on how much a trade would bring out of balance or bring into balance said asset of the pool. So these dynamic fees, they can range, but in terms of the base spot fees, so for spot trading, the base fee for volatile assets would be 0.2%, whereas the base spot fee for stable assets would be 0.015%. And then in terms of leverage trading, there are a couple of fees involved here. So the first fee is whenever a user is opening or closing their leveraged position, there would be a fee taken which consists of 0.1%. And then if, let's say, because this is also somewhat important point to highlight, if a user would like to open a position with, let's say, longing FTM, but they have a different asset, let's say such as Bitcoin or something else, a stable, the protocol would automatically swap in order to be able to create that position, but it would also apply a regular swap fee with that base value of 0.2 or 0.015% for volatile or stable assets, respectively. Then there are a couple of other fees to keep in mind in terms of leverage trading. We need to be able to cover keeper as well as execution costs for trades. And so essentially the way that the trading system works is whenever a user creates a position, this is relayed to the blockchain, and then a system of keepers essentially are looking for these events to be able to then create that position and confirm it for the user. It's a really quick process. And so just being able to provide for those gas costs, and thankfully on Phantom, they are some of the lowest costs. And then also a final fee that can be considered for leverage trading would be a borrowing fee, which this rate would increase as the utilization of any specific or given asset in the pool increases. So we don't want to be able to, hitting those 100% utilization caps. We always want to be able to maintain liquidity inside of the pool. And those would be the fees for spot and leverage trading in a nutshell.
Yeah, very cheap fees, and extremely competitive, which I think traders are always looking for. And then Phantom is, let's be real, basically free to trade on anyways.
Oh yeah.
So
absolutely.
And when you take into account the almost zero gas fees, and then incredibly competitive and low trading fees, and then with what you're talking about with just a superior user experience, UI, UX, I think that really becomes, very appealing to a lot of people once they understand, one, the experience, the amount of money they can make from the rewards and how those rewards are structured, how you're handling the treasury, and then your fee structure, which I think are just like 4 key components that you guys are crushing. So really good work on that.
Thank you.
I think you're going to get a lot of positive feedback and interaction. So, all right. So cool. So I appreciate all the breakdown on the tokenomics, the project, fee structure, and all that. So let's kind of, if you just want to talk a little bit about what you guys are doing for security. I think it's very important to note first that Morpheus Swap was never exploited, despite its success, and I'm sure the many attempts on it. So obviously that says a lot. It's a huge testament to what you guys have done. So what is kind of your approach going forward to continue to build on that success for security?
Thank you for mentioning that part about Morpheus Swap, because it's been a very, very important topic for us always when running Morpheus Swap, and now with running Morphex especially, as the system becomes quite a bit more complex than what was existing in Morpheus Swap. So in terms of the approach for security, I think there's a couple of key kind of, let's say, like general topics that you can keep in mind. In terms of just based off of let's say, smart contract ownership, being able to, like admin privileges, roles, setting parameters. This is an existing process that we have with Morpheus Swap, but we're well used to, using time locks as well as a multi-signature wallet. As time progresses, we would look to be able to add in well-known sort of more neutral signers from the Phantom ecosystem onto that multi-signature wallet. And then aside from just those, let's say, sorry. And then aside from just the time lock plus multi-sig, which is just sort of, just a technical kind of side, I think it's really important to sort of always be able to have this concept in your mind of never leaving a potential single point of failure. And so it's always sort of revising. I mean, I probably go crazy before I deploy or launch anything. Like the amount of times that I'm double checking everything, even after all the tests have went through successfully, and whatnot. It's like a crazy amount of times that I'm double checking, triple checking, like 10-time checking or whatever, every single parameter that's set, making sure that there's not one single point of sort of failure which could bring the entire system down, because I think this is overlooked in many situations, and really that's when an exploit or something like that could happen. And this applies not just to the smart contracts, but this applies to who has access to being able to change the front end that's deployed and visible to users. Because over 2022, for instance, we saw a good amount of domain names being hacked or being blocked, and there wasn't a consistent or well-timed response from the development team. So there's also a specific plan and strategy that I always have laid out in terms of any sort of emergency situation. So being prepared for really anything, I think, is important, and especially with the new perpetual futures model that we're bringing to Phantom right now. It's very important to be able to provide a multitude of keepers as well as liquidator bots. Obviously not just one, but a multitude, which are all ran by various different team members, and then having an additional layer of security where you're essentially able to have a watcher node that is verifying that each keeper is submitting each position correctly and submitting the median price correctly as well. And if there's anything that's going wrong, being able to enforce being able to enforce using the chain link price instead of a median price from multiple exchanges. And then as time goes on in terms of security, we're big believers, obviously, in trying not to keep too many sort of centralized powers within the team. And in this sense, we've had a lot of work together with Chainlink, as well as a lot of sort of talking with them. And we think that their Chainlink automation model, previously it was just Chainlink keepers, is definitely something that will be utilized in allowing us to be able to more decentralize our keepers and liquidators, and as well over time allowing liquidators and liquidations to be able to be accessible to anyone. But in the very beginning, I think really any project needs to take this sort of stance, be it just a DeFi project or a blockchain. In a lot of situations nowadays, it's much better to be able to have a potentially slightly more centralized system, but being able to control and making sure that you can have much more faster reaction times, as well as making sure that the system that you've deployed is rigorous and will not fail, because only then, once you're certain of that, is when you can begin the further decentralization process. So this has also been a point that was brought up multiple times, about GMX specifically, about maybe some other forks of GMX. But it would be great to see a protocol sort of really commit as much as they can into decentralizing the keeper and liquidator process, because so far on every single sort of protocol that's based off of GMX, I mean, most likely every single perpetual protocol really, everything really depends a lot on a centralized party to make sure that everything is running smoothly. Some time ago, we saw that from one GMX fork called Mycelium. Unfortunately, Binance, since I think they're based in the US, they were using a US Binance API for one of their price feeds, and unfortunately, they started getting blocked, and they weren't able to get their price requests through to the Binance API. And then at that same time, they had a different price feed which went down, and essentially it only left one centralized exchange price, not a median of 3. And sure, it was being enforced. There's like a specific enforcement that's going on between this median price from exchanges as well as the Chainlink price. but it can still lead to some percentage deviation, which shouldn't really be there. And during that time, unfortunately, their MLP pool, lots of projects using MLP, their pool had unfortunately lost an amount of Ethereum from its assets. So I think this is one point where we can also really bring some progress in terms of after launch as rapidly as possible, sort of bringing a much more decentralized and transparent system. In the very beginning, though, I think it's important. GMX has implemented this, I think, in order to allow users to much more easily see exactly what the statuses are of, let's say, time lock transactions, keepers, and whatnot. Open Zeppelin has a really great system called Sentinel, which is able just to subscribe to events like this and stuff. So that's something that we'll definitely be utilizing in the beginning as well. So yeah, I just hope that by sort of ranting a bit about this, I'm able to kind of bring this idea of security and transparency is always something that in Morpheus Swap and in Morphex will always take a priority.
Yeah, very, very thorough kind of breakdown of everything that you guys are doing for security and how you view security. And it's just, I mean, just looking at your past history, right, should give everyone a ton of confidence just to how seriously you guys kind of take it. And then, you know, and the way that you're looking out for your community is more than just how can we give you money, but how can we give you money safely and make you as safe as possible, right? You know, nothing is ever, 100% safe. There's risk involved in everything. But, I mean, it just goes to show just like the quality of the team and the work that you guys are doing. So I laud you for that, especially for being as big as you were and never being exploited, and just having that that approach as to how you can protect your investors is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite difficult for any protocol to do a comeback after any such exploit or hack, because unfortunately, just you lose community trust, and not just community trust, but unfortunately, most of the time you also use user funds, and that is like something that I never want to ever have to experience. And so that's why I just keep it in my mind, with every single effort, just make sure that security is on par.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So let's, I know we're coming up on the hour here. So I'll just kind of, just get a couple quick insights on a couple more things before we wrap this up. Is what are you guys looking at as far as partnerships? I know you launched pools on Equalizer, which is great. I love Hoops and Gorgery. We're going to be talking to them later. It's obviously a great team to work with there. So what else are you looking at as far as partnerships? And then what do you got coming near term on the roadmap? Are you got some beta testing coming up, or what are you guys thinking about there?
So in terms of partnerships, at the current moment, we've mainly just been working together with Equalizer a lot, as well as we did some talking with Firebird, so that when we're able to launch the protocol, we could have immediate integration, because aggregator integration, especially with this sort of hybrid AMM model, I think is really key, because the potential for revenue from spot trading should not be overlooked. And a lot of DeFi is really trending towards aggregators, or probably my favorite aggregator would be like DeFi Llama's meta aggregator, because it's just aggregating all the aggregators. But yeah, so that's kind of what we've been discussing so far in terms of partners. Really, I'd say the most focus right now is probably on just the platform itself. There's a couple of other ideas that we do have in mind for partnerships and what could happen in terms of for MPX or for Morphex itself. We already had a lot of offers as well that we're kind of keeping in mind and slowly sort of building out. There's a lot of discussion as well in terms of being able to release a really sort of actually high quality NFT collection on Phantom, which would be heavily sort of community based. Involving some successful NFT artists on Phantom. Some other ideas have been, with other protocols, have been involved in potential leverage for MPX FTM. But a lot of these are just at stages where we're probably more so focused on really just churning out the platform as soon as possible right now for Morphex, and then really focusing a bit more on these other aspects. But it's all kind of going on in the background as well.
Yeah, very cool. A lot of good teams that you guys are tied in with, and then a lot of exciting things coming. So sorry, I was trying to click through my notes here. I've been typing, trying to. I didn't type them in like a separate portion, so I was trying to get myself back to where I wanted to be at. But do you guys have kind of an anticipated launch that you are able to put out there, or is that anticipated launch window per se?
Yeah, I mean, always, with like development timelines, be it Web 2 or Web 3, it's always difficult to give an exact date, because a lot of it is always, something else pops up that you want to quickly hammer in, and then something else, and then usually it just gets to a point where you're like, okay, it's probably better to just launch the product right now and, continue working on top of it. So it's just finding that balance, I guess. But in terms of an actual launch window, that's the second half of February. Probably more leaning into closer towards the end of the month. But yeah.
Very cool. Looking forward to it. I'll be keeping an eye out. And I'm obviously not a phenomenal trader. I still have a lot to learn, but I've been hoping for a really good platform on Phantom where it's super cheap, so I don't take, and there's no shots at Arbitrum here. They're super cheap as well, but I'd rather do a 1 cent gas fee to learn how to trade over a 30 to 60 cent gas fee to learn how to trade. So, and then with all the features that you guys got, it's kind of like a learner's dream to put $20 in there and, have small fees and just learn that way. So I'm super excited to see it launch and to be able to get involved there. So really stoked for you guys, everything you built. So I think it's going to be, Morpheus swap itself is awesome. So I can only imagine how cool this is going to be.
Thank you. Yeah, extremely excited as well. Just soon be launching Morphex. It's just it's been in the works for quite some time. We went through. There's a couple of other team members that sort of were kind of with us for let's say 2 or 3 weeks, but then they weren't really a fit, and so now we finally kind of last month finalized the exact team, and yeah, it's a really exciting process, and I'm really stoked to be able to deliver this product not just to our existing community, but really targeting a lot of new users that would be onboarded onto Phantom, especially again keeping in mind how Phantom is planning to make the onboarding process so much easier. And as you said, extremely cheap fees. I think one more thing that we could quickly underline is the fact that Phantom has a really good operational history, especially compared to some other blockchains. So for a perpetual futures trading platform, that is extremely important. And so combine that with cheap fees, I think we have the perfect recipe for a blockchain to call home.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think took advantage of, quite the right time with Phantom, and just what Phantom was really needing. So, and I think it's perfect opportunity. Weathered the storm and then found yourself in the perfect storm. So, very excited for you guys. So with that, I guess that kind of wraps up the questions that I had. I really appreciate your guys' time. And then, the super in-depth breakdown of the entire project from, all the features to the tokenomics, how rewarding that's going to be for your users, how cheap it is, everything that you guys are doing in security, and the little things that you're doing as far as trying to build a huge or a really good mobile app to really bring mass adoption, right? And so you're thinking long term, and not just not just for the foreseeable or not just for the near future, but for the long-term foreseeable future. So I really appreciate everything there and everything that you guys are doing in your time. So what I like to do at the end is just kind of give you guys the final word and let you, put out whatever message you want to the community about Morphex.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure on this AMA. And I guess just for a final word, probably just in a nutshell, look forward to Morphex launching soon on Phantom. I'm certain that we are going to be making waves. Really, really excited for the team that's formed around it, especially the user experience that we hope to be able to will appeal to the majority of not just current but new users. In terms of if anybody is interested in potentially taking part right now, in terms of that, we have opportunities available on Equalizer in terms of our LP. So the official liquidity is already out. Or there's also a bonding opportunity with USDC that is available for only 3 more days. And after that, most likely that would be the final bonding opportunity. So no more sort of like slippage-free possibility to acquire MBX. And yeah, there's a lot of updates that are really in store, especially for February. A lot of news. And I think that that kind of sums it up from my end. So yeah.
You got anything, X?
Nah, man, excellent sharing from Morpheus.
All right.
Thanks so much for the compliments, Relentless.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think you guys are a great team and you built a great, well, I haven't seen it yet, but it sounds like you built a great project based off your past history. There's no reason to think otherwise. So, like I said before, very excited to see it and get involved. So, again, really appreciate your guys' time. With that, I guess I'll go ahead and kind of wrap this up.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you so much again for hosting us.
Yeah,
it was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Hopefully, get you guys on here again after launch and you guys get moving. So.
Oh yeah, we can circle back.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Yep, absolutely. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. This has been awesome AMA with Morphex and Investor X or X from the Morphex team. Get involved with their socials and their community to stay on top of the launch and all that. And if you're hearing this on right now, sorry, I'm butchering this, my bad. If you're hearing this on YouTube right now for the first time, hit that like and subscribe. We got a lot more coming for you. Very grateful for your time, and we'll see you next time.